Have you ever noticed that your grandmother's kitchen mixer has outlived 3 of your modern blenders? Or that the heavy wool coat she gave you looks better after 40 years than the one you bought last season? We're living in a throwaway age where objects are designed to die. But not long ago, the world ran on a different system. It's 1954. In Gran Betty's house, the word new isn't exciting, it's suspicious. To Gran Betty, something brand new hasn't earned its place yet. It hasn't proven it can stand the test of time. Today, we are taught the opposite. Out with the old, upgrade, replace, discard. But for Gran Betty's generation, old was the only thing you could truly trust. In the 1950s, the hand-me-down economy wasn't a lifestyle choice or a vintage trend, it was survival. When Gran Betty got married, her kitchen table didn't arrive in a flat-pack box with a hex key. It was solid oak, and it had already lived a full life. Gran Betty's mother had used it for 30 years. It had survived the Great Depression and lived through the Blitz. The surface was scarred with knife marks and coffee rings. One leg sat slightly shorter than the others. And yet, when you leaned on it, it didn't wobble. That table didn't just hold meals. It held arguments, laughter, bills, and birthday cards. It held Gran Betty's family together, one ordinary day at a time. So, why on earth would she replace it with chrome and formica? There is a story Gran Betty used to tell about her neighbour, Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins was a woman who loved to keep up with the times. One afternoon, she proudly invited Gran Betty over to see her modern acquisition, a flashy pastel pink electric kettle made of a newfangled lightweight alloy. It whistled like a choir and looked like a spaceship. It cost Mrs. Higgins £3.15, a tidy sum back then. Gran Betty looked at it, patted her own heavy blackened copper stovetop kettle, and simply said, "Well, it's very pretty, dear, but can you drop it on a stone floor and still make a brew?" 2 months later, the Pink Kettle's heating element gave up the ghost, and because the casing was crimped shut by a factory machine, it couldn't be opened. Mrs. Higgins had to bin it. Meanwhile, Gran Betty's copper kettle lived on for another 40 years, eventually being used to warm water for her grandchildren's baths during power cuts. To Gran Betty, that pink kettle wasn't progress. It was a prank played on the wallet. Back then, Gran Betty's primary question wasn't, is it fashionable? It was, will it last? Take Gran Betty's Sunday coat. It cost her £12.10, nearly 2 weeks' wages. To us that sounds like a bargain, but to Gran Betty, it was a serious commitment. She didn't see it as spending money, she saw it as parking her wealth in something that wouldn't evaporate. She didn't buy it on impulse. She checked the stitching, the lining, and the weight of the fabric because she expected to live with it for decades. And that coat was made with Gran Betty's expectations in mind. It had deep hems ready to be let down for a growing daughter and spare fabric hidden inside the seams for future repairs. For Gran Betty, nothing was wasted, nothing was rushed. Gran Betty didn't shop for convenience. In fact, convenience made her uneasy. If her heavy iron kettle finally did need a tweak, Gran Betty didn't bin it. She walked down to the Ironmonger, the same shop she'd visited for years, where the air smelled of oil and metal. She bought a replacement part for £2.04, took it home, and fixed it herself. To Gran Betty, repair wasn't a burden. It was a skill and a point of quiet pride. Throwing away something that could be mended didn't feel efficient to Gran Betty. It felt wrong. Consider Gran Betty's relationship with the local tradespeople. When the soles of her boots wore thin, she didn't browse a catalogue for a new pair. She visited the cobbler. For 5 shillings and 6 pence, he would strip back the worn leather and nail on a fresh sole. He wasn't just selling her a service, he was helping her maintain an asset. Gran Betty knew that a good pair of boots was like a friendship. It took time to break in. But once it fit, you did everything in your power to keep it. She used to joke that by the time she was finished with a pair of shoes, the only original part left was the lace, but they were the most comfortable things on God's green earth. She understood a mathematical truth we often ignore: the cost per use. That £12 and 10 shillings coat, worn every winter for 30 years, cost Gran Betty mere pennies per day. Compare that to a cheap modern jacket that costs £60 but falls apart in 6 months. Gran Betty was actually the one saving money, while we are the ones paying a poverty tax for things that need constant replacement. Gran Betty lived in a world of real materials: wool, wood, steel, and stone. These materials don't just last longer, they age with character. A plastic table chips and looks like rubbish, but Gran Betty's oak table developed a patina. It grew more beautiful as it grew older. She understood that we don't just live with our things, we live through them. They become the silent witnesses to our lives. She once found a marble under the sideboard that had been there since 1942, a tiny glass treasure that had survived a world war simply because the furniture was too heavy to move and too good to replace. Even the way Gran Betty managed her housekeeping money was a lesson in microeconomics. She kept her cash in a series of tins on the high shelf. One was for the rent, one for the coal, and one for emergencies. When she saved for a new purchase, it was a slow, deliberate victory. Buying a new woolen rug for the hearth for £6 and 10 shillings wasn't a transaction. It was a celebration. Because it had taken months to save for, it was treated with a reverence we reserve for expensive electronics today. Gran Betty would never dream of walking across that rug with muddy boots. It was a part of the home's soul. This matters now more than ever because, for the first time in history, we are surrounded by objects designed to fail. Not because they have to, but because replacing them is more profitable than repairing them. Durability stopped being the goal. Speed and cheap took its place. We quietly accepted what Gran Betty never would, that nothing was meant to stay. We traded the soul of our possessions for the convenience of the checkout. We've become owners of things we don't understand, surrounded by gadgets we can't fix and clothes we don't value. In Gran Betty's house, "Waste not, want not" wasn't a slogan. It was a philosophy of stewardship. Objects weren't truly owned, they were borrowed from the future. When Gran Betty passed something down, she wasn't giving away rubbish, she was handing over a responsibility. She passed on tables with stories in their grain and tools that remembered the hands that used them. Gran Betty was passing on patience, care, and a respect for effort. Today you can buy a toaster for £15. It works perfectly for a while, and when it stops, you don't open it, you don't look for the ghost of the maker inside, and you certainly don't fix it. You just replace it. You'll probably do that 5 more times before the decade is over. By the end, you've spent £75 on plastic and scrap metal, while Gran Betty's heavy steel toaster is still browning bread in the background, making a click that sounds like a job well done. Gran Betty understood the secret. The most expensive thing you can buy is something that doesn't last. Before you buy something new this week, look at what you already have through the eyes of Gran Betty. Look for the fixable instead of the replaceable. Seek out the solid wood, the heavy metal, and the genuine leather. If it's lasted this long, maybe it's earned the right to stay. When you choose to mend rather than replace, you're choosing continuity in a world that profits from forgetting. You're standing, just for a moment, in the same place Gran Betty stood, valuing the things that value you back. True wealth isn't about how much you can buy. It's about how much you no longer need to replace. Gran Betty knew that the best things in life aren't things at all, but the stories and memories we attach to the objects that stay with us for the journey. Stop buying for today and start investing for forever. That is the lesson of Gran Betty's house. It's about more than just furniture and coats. It's about the dignity of things that endure. It's about remembering that when we throw something away, there is no such place as away. Gran Betty knew that, and maybe, deep down, we do too. If you want to live like Gran Betty today, start by taking an inventory of your own home. Go through your cupboards and find 3 things that are tired, but not broken. That leather bag with the loose stitching. Don't browse for a new one. Find a local repair shop and spend £20 to give it another decade of life. That wooden chair that wobbles. Buy a small bottle of wood glue for £5 and make it solid again. Even your wardrobe holds treasures. A jumper with a small hole isn't a rag. It's a 10-minute project with a needle and thread. Gran Betty would tell you that every time you fix something, you reclaim a little bit of your own independence. You stop being a passive consumer and start being a caretaker. You begin to see your home not as a collection of soon-to-be rubbish, but as an estate of valuable assets. It's a slow process, but it's a rewarding one. You'll find that as you care more for your things, you'll actually want fewer of them. You'll stop chasing the new and start cherishing the known. Because in the end, a house full of hand-me-downs isn't just a house full of old stuff. It's a house full of friends who have been through the wars with you and are still standing strong. That's the real hand-me-down economy. It's the legacy of Gran Betty, and it's waiting for you to pick up the thread. If you believe we need to bring back the quality and care of Gran Betty's generation, then help us spread the word. Hit the like button if you've got something in your house that's lasted for decades, and subscribe to join our community of modern-day menders. Most importantly, I want to hear your stories. Comment below and tell me about the one hand-me-down item you own that you will never ever throw away. Let's prove to the world that durability still matters. For more of Gran Betty's wisdom, check out the playlist on the channel. See you in the next video.